This
Just
conference will
setting,
now be recorded.
yeah, not so much that it's not working, just to make sure that we set it up for the appropriate users. And Julie was asking the question in regards to, and I asked you this question, Dan, is the team going to have access to LinkedIn Sales Navigator? And and the answer is yes. We talked about that, Dan. You're going to work on getting that, and then those tabs will magically appear for those people. So we still need to set that up, Robert, and I'm going to let Julie handle some of that. The other issue is, and Julie will probably do a little training on this, and I apologize for the noise here. My car has been breaking down with the air conditioning, so I'm working again at Starbucks today. So if you hear noise in the background, I apologize. So the other issue is, along the navigation on the left where you have accounts and contacts, on the left-hand side, and there's a couple of jigsaw puzzle pieces for the custom entities we created. You see that
Yeah,
there?
job postings and job applications. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, John, if you're also online, but yeah.
Sorry, I was looking at my the Word document window, so my apologies. So those
No,
two
I
things.
just opened.
Yeah,
Hopefully, people
yeah,
can see
I
my
see it.
screen. Which
I see it. Yeah. So the job postings and job applications, there is a way to change those jigsaw puzzle icons so to something more meaningful. So I don't know, maybe we'll have a resume looking thing or some kind of a document looking thing um, for job applications and job postings. Maybe we'll have a dollar sign or something like that. But I'm going to let Julie work with that and take the lead on that. If you guys want to do some homework and research on how you can change that, I'm sure there's some documents online to do that. But that's one thing we want to do just from a usability standpoint as well. So that's an open issue. I'm reading here. The other issue we
I
just
would
need to deal. Go ahead.
I would say this is absolutely something that any one of the three folks on the call right now could take on. I'm pretty confident. I mean, it's some research and maybe an icon library there. But does anybody? Why don't we do that and take that off of Julie's plate, because I think that's probably something within the scope of what our folks can do. Anybody want to take that
Sure.
on?
Well, I can look into it for you, John. And if anyone else would like to join in, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's always it's that's great, Sarita. Thanks for stepping up to that. And anybody else? I mean, if you want to just do it, it's a great opportunity, kind of needs-driven, opportunity to kind of learn, another aspect of this. So, thanks, Sarita. Yeah, and I would encourage Robert, Victor to look into it.
And what I do, Sarita, with that, since Dan is the customer and it's his application in many ways, if you have some ideas for what might be some good icons for that, I would send them over to Dan, get his approval. Again, this is just in the normal everyday working with customers, get his approval, and then you can load up the appropriate one that Dan approves.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Or come up with some options, right? So he's got something to choose from, and yeah.
And in regards to the other security issue we have is for, let's just call it the employer users, for them to see employer contacts, and for the veteran users, Carol's team, for Carol's team to only see veteran contacts. From a security issue standpoint, that's something that Julie and I are going back and forth on in terms of how to best do that, because contacts, if we universally say everyone can see contacts, but we have different types of contacts, how do we partition that off? And that might be by setting up users in what's called a team, and then those team users see the appropriate contacts. So Julie's got some ideas there. So we're waiting, or we're going to wait to hear back from Julie on that one. And the last one is a data upload as well.
Yeah. So the upshot, John, just going back to your the last issue here, the visibility. Two things. First of all, this is obviously something that Robert's working on, and I think because we're still sort of like we're not real sure if it's going to be driven by the value in the contact type field, right, or driven by user and how much of a particular comprehensive record a user is going to be able to see, right, and organized by tabs, presumably. Then the work that you're doing in those three different forms, one for candidate, one for contact, and one that is comprehensive, I think is good that you're continuing on that path, presuming that you are.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's all still fine work. We just got to figure out the best security. Julie's got some ideas on that, so I'm going to let her run with that.
And the other point that should be made is that really Carol's not going to be in the picture for another few months, right? Dan and his team are really going to be the only users for a while. So, it could be a cascading, or sort of an unfolding type of deal that we don't need to address right now. I mean, it's not urgent, but it's important.
Correct. So those
John,
yep.
To that point, I put together like a super small presentation, kind of examining both approaches and my recommendation. If y'all want to look at that, but I think there's a pretty clear answer, just from what I can see.
Bottom line, what does it look like?
Yeah, so the restricting kind of information's the best approach that I can tell is doing it using security roles. Well, security roles in multiple forms. You can restrict forms, views, and entities and fields. The tabs, from what I can tell, you have to use a script to restrict it. It's possible. I don't think it's necessary, and it's essentially a customization that wouldn't be supported by Microsoft, right? Dynamics out of the box allows you to create security roles, customize what those security roles can see on a form, what forms they can see on an entity, and what entities they can see in an app or solution. Once you start kind of hiding tabs, or a big thing is, I guess, customizing the ribbon, like where it says sandbox up at the top. That's one thing that people seem to use scripts a lot for. But once you start doing that, you're kind of using outside sources, web resources like JavaScript code that somebody writes to make Dynamics 365 do something. So it's possible, but if something goes wrong with it, it's not like you can contact, Microsoft's customer support or something and say, hey, can someone walk me through this? So, I mean, from what I can tell, it just seems like one entity, multiple forms and views, security roles based on who gets to see what, and it kind of all works out of the box. The entity is a little bit like I put together a PDF I can send you, but the entity gets a little bigger in the solution because it has these additional forms. But that's kind of it. When you do even the JavaScript kind of hide the tab approach, and I can demonstrate that. I have it set up in a test environment, but you still need the additional views. You still have to create the security roles. The only thing you're not creating is additional forms. So the savings on kind of work done is minimal.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Robert. You don't want to do anything that's custom scripting, because then you got to support it, and then Microsoft may not support it. But I think we can say, okay, this form is for these types of users and permissions, and this form that hides some tabs, or that doesn't have all the tabs, excuse me, I should say it that way, is available for other types of users. So I agree with that. And then going one step further is actually hiding contacts overall based upon the users as well. So we need to think about that one. That's one you didn't discuss in what you just said. But I agree with
I
you
did
in
look
what you
into
said.
that. Yeah, I did look into that. For example, this record we're looking at here, Genghis Khan, how to kind of hide what the user sees for just Genghis Khan's information. And going through, you can do field security. So if someone with a specific security role looked at this form, maybe they wouldn't be able to see first name, last name, and so on. But the record level security is from what I can tell, from what I read in the documentation, is equivalent to entity level security. If you restrict someone's access to contacts, they wouldn't be able to see any of the contacts.
Right, but what
Uh,
I'm saying is they actually do see contacts. What I'm saying is based upon owner of the record, which could be a team or an individual, they will only see or not see contact records. That's what I'm saying. This is a little different. We're going through owners of records and teams who own records. Does that make sense?
a little bit, yeah. I know. Yeah, I know. Like security levels can be at the organization, business unit, team, or just that record owner, someone who created it, is the only one who can see it. So, um, yeah, it's just thinking about it. It sort of seems like it's certainly possible. But to the original ask, like the one form solution, I don't. Is that something that can be done by restricting information based on owner? Because an owner of a record would also be the owner of everything on the form, right? I don't. Did I lose you guys?
Sorry, I was on mute. I had some sound in the background. So, again, rather than take up the entire time here, Robert, this is all really great stuff. Um, I want to make sure that we do this right, kind of the first time, and hence kind of wanting to speak it out with Julie. But again, the way I look at it is Dan's team. Let's just call it the employer team for a moment. Is made up of Dan, Mary, Joe, and Susie. Making that up. Okay. And the owners of the record is called Dan's team, which means Joe, Mary, Susie, and whatever other name I just said
Okay. Yeah. Nope. I
see
got you. I'm tracking.
those records. Yeah. So now Carol's team owns all the veterans records. So on a veteran record of Carol's team, Paul, Joe and Susie, what I'm using different, I got to use different names. They own
Yeah.
those records. That's where I'm going. So
Okay. Yeah. I understand now. And it's based on creation or assignment if a system administrator changes the owner. Okay. Yeah. No. I get it. That makes sense.
yeah, so that's kind of um, what I want to kind of work on, and this way, Dan's team will only see employer accounts and contacts, and Carol's team will only see the others.
John Kassar, this is Victor. Are those teams separate separate from security? Is it a different angle than security and permissions?
A little bit, yes.
Okay.
So again, so just so you know, I'm an expert in a lot of things in dynamics. Because I am not what I want to call a functional consultant, my role at Microsoft is to sell Dynamics. So a lot of times when I'm compiling demos, doing things, user ability and what have you, I don't really get into setting up all the users for a production system. We just talk about it in my sales demos with customers saying, yeah, that can be done on and on and on, but we actually don't set it up in demos. This is where I'm running a little short, where Julie can step up and really assist. So if I'm sounding like I know what I'm doing, I do, but only some of the concepts is what I'm saying, because I don't do it on a day-to-day basis as a functional consultant. Make sense?
Yeah, no, that's super clear. I've been reading the
Yeah.
documentation, and it still seems like multiple forms will be needed, though.
No, I think you're probably right, though. You know, some users will go to one form, the other users will go to the other form, but I'm also looking at securing the contact records via ownership is kind of what I'm thinking. But I want to run that by Julie.
Right, and it kind of like once things get going, cases will start, presenting themselves that really justify more, more kind of interconnection. And so, the fact that we've got this framework in place now will really make that go so much better.
Yeah, but again, all of this comes down to the overall navigation, and then setting up the users and so forth. That's a lot easier to do. The setting up the navigation look and feel is more is what needs to be done more so.
Okay, great. Do you, John, you wanted to, if, we sort of talked about the access and visibility by user group and by form. If you feel that we've kind of resolved that, at least for now, I know the next one that you had mentioned was the data upload. Did you want to talk about that?
The data upload, I did not even get a chance to look at it yet. So
okay.
I don't want to talk about that at this point.
Okay. I think that's one of the things Julie had wanted to talk about. I think I can say that Julie has no power, basically. It boils down to that. I just read her email, responded. She has no power in her home. So, yeah. Anyhow, that's the issue. So it's not a health issue or anything like that. Okay. Well, look, let's maybe if we can, let's kind of go through. I think we're down to a point where we've got a really pretty good architecture for this thing. And I think, I've got some comments about usability, UX stuff that I'd like to talk about. Does anybody, before I do that though, does anybody else have any, issues or questions you'd like to surface?
This is Robert. I just one. So the kind of user experience, the way the security roles are set up will dictate a lot of that. So, like for example, if one team logs in, they won't get the drop-down menu for various types of forms. They'll just see one form. Now, I don't know the answer to this, but the main menu on the left-hand side, whether that can be restricted by role, whether you see that or not, is something I'd have to look into.
So you'll look into that? Or?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. In other words, hiding a few of the menu items that are there, like the veteran contacts. I didn't think about that, but the way that can actually be done, which there's one way I'm thinking about, but I'm not sure we want to do this, is we can literally set up another app that use all the same entities, but in the second app that we point Carol's contacts to versus Carol's users versus Dan's users, they would see different things. But that's another way we can do it, but I don't know if I want to go down that road. So let's see maybe if Carol has something on that. And then what I would do, John, if you want to add that to the list, that'd be great. but that's a good. I hadn't thought about that, so thank you, Robert.
Yeah, I know. So if it's set up with just security roles as is, if someone who doesn't have permissions clicks on kind of veteran contacts or veteran job applications, it'll just be blank, or it'll direct them to what they have access to, like contacts. It'll show employer contacts. But yeah, so what you proposed, I guess, is or might propose is a multi-solution. Multi-solution, I guess. So one app running separate solutions, depending.
Yes, but I'm not sure that that's the best. So I'm gonna wait to see
Yeah,
what
no,
Karen says, and if you want to add that, John, to the list, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, it's Victor. I think we're still kind of beating up the difference between the employers and the veterans. While we're still beating that up, I wanted to ask John Kassar. I was testing on my side, and I found that with the, I think it's the data scheme where you have the navigation panel on the left-hand side. I found that if you had well, maybe I could show you. Pictures worth 1,000 words if I could have the screen for a minute. Or I could try to ask you that if you change the data scheme and you have two high-level categories. Here, yeah, let me get the screen. I'll show you. Is everybody seeing my screen now? We're on the bottom left. You see where it says employers? Mm-hmm. I did this a few weeks ago, so I kind of forgot how I did it. But using this bottom left where you see employers and then you could change it to veterans, I noticed I was able to, not without security or anything else, now that you're looking at contacts veterans, you notice that there's a view here with the veteran first name and the veteran last name. And then if I click on the name here, you see that I've got a view that shows that is distinct to the veteran, where it says vet first name. And if I go down to the bottom here and click on employers, and then I go to contacts, you see that this list view does not have the veteran. And then if I click on the last name, you see here that it does not say veteran. So I've been able to get it to change depending on whether I'm looking at employers or veterans, and then distinguish between the contacts. And I'm 99% sure that I'm still using the same contacts table or entities. So John, I guess the question is for John Kassar. Do you know much about how this navigation changes from the data scheme, and if this is kind of a little trick to accomplishing this? Because like I say, I kind of forgot how I did it, but I did not mess with security or teams or roles or anything like that.
Looks promising, John.
I might be muted.
Sorry. Yes, sorry. So what I was going to say is I normally don't run into this for my roles in my role right now, and I'm not exactly sure, how's the best way to do it, but that does look promising, as John just said.
John, should I spend a few moments coming up with an explanation of how it got done so we could talk about it, so I could talk about it intelligently at our next meeting? Or should we do we just want to let or do we just, let me know what direction you want to go, because I don't want to muddy the waters, but I think if it's easy, maybe it's something we could look into.
This is a conversation that I would definitely have with Julie. Yeah,
she'll. I'll encourage her to join us. It'd be nice if she can join us at our regular meeting on Monday. Now, I had not, by the way, extended. I think I had extended this series through next week, assuming that we would be done. But we can always modify or extend, just like we did today. But yeah, that was the intent for today, to have Julie address questions like this to her. But yeah, nice work, Victor. Good. Yeah, that's that's something that's really good to know, and we'll want to pursue that with Julie.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Can I ask Victor? Yeah, Victor? The contacts, the veterans and employers, is that the same entity or was that two separate entities?
Yeah, I think the context is the same. I can't remember what trigger I'm using or how I'm distinguishing it at this highest level here when you switch between veterans and employers. I'll dig into a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's really great to know that's possible. And like I say, when as John has suggested, let's bring this up with Julie so that we can have a good back and forth around this. Okay. Anybody else has any issues or questions at this point? I did want to go through the user, the UX stuff. Since we got Dan on the phone, I just want to kind of check some things out with him.
Yeah, I'm ready to move forward.
Okay. All right. Great. Let's see. I'll take the view back from you, Victor, if that's all right.
Yep, I gave it up.
Okay. All right. So I had a couple of thoughts here, and I'll start, I guess, with accounts, Sarita's domain here, and go to our good old standby sample code that has robust information that we can use. So this looks really good, right? We've got you've got a nice, tight, concise summary here that is where most. I'm imagining, Dan, and I'd really like to get you, and all this is really directed at you. So these are more questions than assertions at this point. But I'm assuming you like the layout here so far. You got everything in a short little space, most of what you need, right? Real quick summary, their hiring portal user, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if we go to contacts, I think. Yeah. So, are these the values that you want to see when you see a list of related contacts? I assume so, and I see, Sarita, that you did change this. That's great. But name, title, role, is I think you call it. What their email is. If they don't have one, it'll be evident here. Phone. Are they a primary contact or no? And there probably shouldn't. The question I have really for you, Dan, is can there be more than one primary contact for an account, or is it always just a one-to-one kind of relationship? Dan, that's a question. Are you still with us?
He's muted in the meeting here.
Right.
So
right.
maybe he's on the other line. So let me just say this, John. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
An account record can only have one primary contact. Only. And all the rest are going to be additional contacts, a one-to-many relationship. But there's only one primary contact.
Okay. That's kind of what I figured. So we're going to have to figure out a way to. Well, I don't know. We're able to say here yes to two contacts. That's why I mentioned it.
So let me ask the question. Is there a reason you created a field called primary contact when literally it's a lookup field right on the account record?
That's my So it's built in, huh, John Kashar? That should be a field that's built in so that it enforces only having one, I suppose.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know.
Did you create that field called primary contact, Victor?
No, that was something that Dan. You know, it's really, I think it's still a question for Dan, because I don't know what he means, how he's using this primary contact idea.
Okay, so
right?
once again,
so here it says, is this person the primary contact? Well, it actually should say, who is the primary contact? It's not a question. It's really like, this is the primary contact for this account. And to me, I would agree with you, John. I think, yeah, it really implies that, yeah, I mean, it's one or the other. I mean, you've got one primary contact, or you wouldn't call it that.
Right, which is going back to the question is, why do we need a field on the contact record that has a checkbox field that looks like was created custom that says primary contact, yes or no?
Well, because it should be a checkbox, because if you're looking at this, then you're basically saying, okay, this is a primary contact. You're identifying very quickly which among the many employees is the primary contact. And you may, based on some of this information, you may be able to justify, say, maybe somebody else is designated as a primary contact, in which case you can compare this to the others and say, okay, I'm going to make this one, because this guy left the company or something, and then one of the others should be, maybe you can go to the other and say, hey, you know, I think based on our record, you should be the primary contact. It's just sort of like a reference, right?
It's just confusing to me because I'm so used to seeing a primary contact only, not multiple. And what happens is, if you check two primary contacts as you have here, only one of them is going to show, which is not even either one of these. It's John Smith, which is currently there.
You're missing what I'm saying is that the reason the column is here, it does assume that there's only one primary contact, but rather than saying yes, no, there'd just be a check mark. And then you can just, if you've got 10 contacts in the company and you happen to go to this list, you want to see in the context of the whole relationship with the account, who the primary contact is. It's just a little check mark, but there's only going to be one in this column, only one. That's all. And then, of course, given what they're doing, you might want to just know, okay, who among these people is a veteran? Again, a check mark. I would make this a check mark.
Okay. Well, if Dan requested it, that's fine.
Well, Dan's not on, and so I'm kind of. He didn't request it, but he didn't request a lot of stuff that he's ended up liking, and so in the end we can say, hey, look, maybe this is too much information, but if you're going to have a contacts list, wouldn't you want to know, who on this list is the primary contact and who on this list might be a veteran? That kind of would be good information, and there's room enough to provide it. It's kind of here on the end. That's just a thought. So I like that. Okay, full name and job title, and if you're going to have a contact list, right, and obviously you don't have the account as a column, as was the case before. Why? Right, because that is everything under here is Sample Co, obviously. Now here's a place too. Now this is account. So Sarita, I think presumably you got the message that we obviously don't need this column, right? Because it's all, by definition, it's all going to be Sample Co. So you can get rid of that, right?
Okay, yes, I can do that today. I got the message that you sent through the chat room.
Okay, great.
And remember, Sarita, when you do this was the little trick I think I showed once before. There is the overall lookup for contacts, which is great, but this lookup is, never mind. I'll check that. I thought we were looking at contacts. Never mind.
So, you know, think about it again from Dan's perspective, and we're working on very limited information because we don't live in Dan's mind. And I don't know if Dan is now listening, but he's on mute. So
yeah, Sarita, actually there is one thing I wanted to say. So you should have 2 job postings views. One that would be associated with the account, which you wouldn't need the employer. So I actually call that job postings dash subgrid. And then you will have an overall job postings, which is literally a combination of all job postings that will have the account associated with it. So remember that trick I showed you where I did a save as, and I did save as the name hyphen subgrid, and it's the subgrid view that I put on the form. Do you remember that?
yeah,
I'm not
it's just like a
sure, but
view.
I think you need to go over it again.
Let's go through this. It might be good to do that, but I just want to first of all say so if you're just, this is generic job posting. So Victor, it looks like you did in fact add employer to here. So because a job posting is uniquely
John,
defined.
I added it today. I went ahead and added
Okay.
it.
On this,
Yes.
Oh, okay. Great, Sarita. Thank you. So this job posting, right? This is the list view that you get, or the view that you get when it's the default view that when you go just to job posting. So if you're just looking to say, hey, I want to know which job postings are active. Well, what defines a job posting? Certainly the job title, right? Which is you can say it's the posting, but that's the job title is the key, right? Is the identifier for that posting. But you know, like you can see here, you got dishwashers, you've got consultants, right? And they could pertain to just about any functional consultant. I mean, you can have a lot of titles like that. So what makes it unique is it's pairing it, you know, it's basically the employer that is offering that, right? So between these two, that makes it a unique item, right? Now we can sort by city. Say, okay, let me see what job, you know, what jobs there are in. Right now we can look at this and say, okay, we can sort by city. We can say, okay, what do we have in Illinois, or you know, okay, here's basically an ordering here, zip code. I like zip code, obviously, because you can use the zip in order to look these up. And it's a lot more pinpointed. There's an awful lot of, we've got a database of like 30,000 zip codes or some crazy number like that we could add to this. Anyway, the point I'm making here is if you want to view this, the job postings, you could be Dan, but you might also be, Carol might want to look at this, and Carol's team might, they might see this, but they may not see other details depending on what kind of security thing that Robert comes up with. But this is, again, a completely separate, what do I want to call it, view. And we're assuming that whoever's looking at this is going to want to know, obviously the job title and employer define the thing. You want to know where it is. I'm not sure how many of these fields to include. You want to know how many openings, of course, and what the status is, when it was posted, and who the contact for this opportunity or this posting is. So again, there's going to be a primary contact for the account, but there's probably going to be a primary contact for this job posting, which may be different from the primary account. Does that make sense? So this is all kind of, I think this is a really good, to me anyway, as a potential user, this is a really good, I think, view. It gives you all the information you might want if you're looking at this entity. Comments?
John, you said for the employer contact, you want to change that to primary contact, or
well, I
mean, in
think
reference of the column that you just showed on your screen on the under the active job postings.
wait a minute. Under active, oh, okay. Job postings. Oh, the employer.
Yes, at the very end, not there, the other one, next to date posted, at the other end.
Oh, here, employer
Yes.
contact.
Okay, can you repeat again? What did you want to change on that one?
Well, really not anything, because if we go now to so the job title is in fact the post, right? So we're going to this entity job postings now, and here's all the background, all the detail, right? Now, we have, so Carita Marrow, I think what I would do is I would add Carita Marrow's title to this. Now, you can get her title by going to her record, but I think it would be really nice if we had, let me just go back to, okay, so Carita's we can only learn about her title and her company, not her company, but her title and all the other important information by going to the record. I think if we go back to the job posting itself, there's plenty of room. So maybe 2 columns here, and where I added the salary, by the way, only because, and I'm not sure I couldn't format this. John, I don't know if you know how to format it so that it's a dollar figure. It just, is kind of an integer or not. And it wasn't, but anyway, and we want to put the openings here. I think if we know who the contact is, for example, this is a programmer, job title. Well, Carita Marrow, maybe she's the hiring manager, we don't know. But if we just put her title, then we'll kind of have an idea. And the reason for that is that, Dan might want to contact her about this job. I don't know, but, you shouldn't have to go to the record in order to find out, okay, what's her role and how she relate to this.
Well, John, I've got a suggestion on that. I think that until we can get it to where we're filtering the choices based on other choices, picking or adding a title might be a data element then that can be easily wrong. Because right now, like when you pick the employer Adobe, I don't even think it filters the possible employees at Adobe. So now if you pick the contact at Marlowe, Carita Marlowe, I don't think it's going to be filter for her job title, unless it could put it in automatically. Like right now, the way it stands, I think you'd have to add another field, which would be another lookup for job titles. But I don't know that you'd be able to. I'm sure it could be done, but I don't know that we know how to filter on another possible filter.
Well, here's my thought about this: is that you can always just enter the contact, right, regardless, and you can put Genghis Khan in here, who's with has some other email address or with some other organization. But look, companies use external recruiters all the time, right? So if it could be somebody who does not have an Adobe domain email. Well, like Dan is he has his address is outlook.com. Why isn't it Microsoft? Well, it's because he's technically a contractor. So that doesn't tell you. You'd probably want to start entering the contact name if you know who the contact is.
Well, if that's the case, that in other words, you're saying that it could be somebody. you're saying that the contact for that position could be a completely unknown entity to our database, in which case now, John, we've got to add about 10 more fields.
Well, no.
We'd have to certainly have the phone number and the email address and maybe the location. I mean, that's 3 more right there.
No, not really. Well, look, if you don't want to put that, it's just an optional field, right? So you can put, okay, there's nobody named Victor, so we're gonna create new, right? And it takes us to quick create, and
right. And now you're building a new contact, right?
Right. And then
so then they will not be. They will not be unknown to our database then, because you're saying from right here, just go ahead and have the ability to add one. Got it.
You know, okay. It's just how robust do you want your database to be, and at what point do you see that?
Well, now
you reach the point of diminishing returns.
And now I see another question that, again, I'm not a pessimist. I'm an analyst. So okay. Now if we go right from there and add a new contact, John, that contact may not be connected to an account or an employer which was not heretofore entered. So now that we add a completely new contact, we definitely should tie them into an employer, which could then be in a recruiting firm.
So here's what you can do is basically say, okay, Adobe, let's look up a contact and we'll just add him to Adobe, period. And you can even put, if you want, I mean, you can put in whatever title you want there, I suppose. But now you just add him to Adobe, and we go to Adobe and we go to contacts, and there's Victor Roselli as a guy who's not the primary contact for the account, but he's a veteran, so let's make him a veteran, because I think he is.
John, can like a recruiter have multiple accounts though, right? Like if it's a third-party recruiting company, they may be recruiting for a few different companies, not just Adobe.
Well, I think John Cassar would agree. You can, but do you really want to add that level of complexity, right? You only want to have one contact, right? Because there's only one of each of us, and dynamics should reflect that. But I'm guessing you're right. But most
I don't think it'll be
exclusive to that. I wouldn't worry about that. That's just such an outlier that I wouldn't worry about that. But I mean, it's good to think about it for other situations. But you see what I'm saying? There's flexibility here. It really depends on how Dan and his team and how Carol, but this is particularly Dan, how they want to use it, right? And you can go overboard with some of this stuff. But we do because we can and because it's valuable from a learning perspective. All right. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question, Victor. It's sort of that is a field that doesn't need to be constrained, right? It should not be, right? Because the contact for that position, if you want to track it, it's really going to be, it's going to be whoever it is, and it might or might not be an existing contact with that account.
Yeah, no, I see how you stretched it a little bit to make it much more effective or usable or powerful for Dan. I think yeah, I could see where you're going with that. And like you said, maybe we need to see what Dan has to say. But I see how you tied it back in and how it can be used and kept updated with the way the rest of the application works. Be interested to see what Dan has to say.
Yeah, we're not real sure how. I think part of it is what we know Dan knows he wants, and part of it is what we think he might want. And again, this is a little unusual in that respect because we have the luxury of Dan's time and attention to help us really better understand what would work for him based on some ideas. So anyway, let's see, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to ask Robert. Robert, you're working on contacts. Wouldn't it be cool? And I know you did this in another, but if, for example, for a contact who is an employer contact, could we make this well, first of all, a checkbox, and if yes, in other words, this field is conditional on the value in this field, right? So if and the veteran, you might want to say, oh yeah, you don't have to put a question mark there, but if it's yes, then it'll basically display this field for entering, right? You don't know. Oh, this is it shouldn't be a multi-select. It should be a single select.
Well, someone can serve in multiple branches.
Yeah,
but,
I know. You know what, though? But again, think of it from the user perspective. It's not that important. You're just going to select a branch with whatever branch that user identifies with. That's it. You know, it's again, that's
John,
way more information than serves the purpose.
John, I have to chime in because now we're talking about data integrity, and if anybody ever ran a report with who of our guys was ever in the Army, you're gonna miss the guy if he was in both the Army and the Navy.
We're talking about vendor. We're talking about employer contacts here. Right? This is all employer contacts. It's not information that currently exists. It's just look.
Can you multi-select in the veterans?
Tell me. Okay. Let me turn it back to you. How do you think this information might be used?
Well, I'm a stickler on data integrity, regardless. I never want to have any garbage that might be a question. Period. So that's always my starting premise, and then I guess you could debate how important it is and how you might use it. So I just feel like if it's easy enough to make it perfectly right, then I don't want to introduce the tertiary effects of having it almost right and sometimes wrong. So since it's easy enough to have a multi-select, I would leave it that way.
Okay, so why not just get rid of that altogether? Because that's
right.
not
that's
current.
Right. That's exactly right. Or get rid of it all. That's exactly right. Or get rid of it. Yep.
I agree.
Okay. Let me ask you something. Again, Dan is, I guess Dan has left us, but if you had Dan's job and it was your job to enlist or recruit employers and to deal with employer contacts, would it have any value at all to know if that contact happens to be a veteran himself or herself? Yes or no? I mean,
yeah, I think having a yes/no there is valuable.
Okay, so so you're saying that if they are a veteran, that it's better not to know what branch of service than to risk getting it wrong.
Well, again, that now you're talking about data integrity, and I think he could use the notes, the timeline. He could use the timeline to make notes and write a story about his service if he wanted to. But I think I think there's plenty of people that like in any case, yeah, we don't. It's your call. I just had to put in a vote that
it's Dan's call.
Yeah.
But here's how I've used it for 10 years. It's like, okay, I've got a whole bunch of employer contacts that I deal with, and I want to know. I mean, if they've served, bang, we've got like 50% of our relationship is based on that alone. Now, if they were Army, right, then I can refer to their service in the Army. I don't have to, if they were in the Navy also, good for them. But it's not the detail, a granular level of detail that's going to serve my purpose in simply relating to a common experience, right? So if they were Army, I can say, I can use that in my conversation going forward because I know that about them, and I know that that's a basis for forming a relationship that matters in this context. So
right,
look,
right.
If you want to be strict and say, okay, I was in the Coast Guard for 2 years, and then I was in the Army, and then I switched to the Navy, who cares in this context? I just want to, I'm just finding a basis of connection with them. And if just one of the many services they served in serves that purpose, then great, pick one. You know, it's not.
I don't, but wouldn't the veteran, I mean, couldn't, like during the initial conversation, oh, you're a veteran, which branch of service did you serve in? And then you get a story, whereas just including the branch of service, like if someone is like, well, I know how Marines are. I don't want any of those guys, you know, and they start filtering it that way without actually talking to the potential applicant. Like it could work against the applicants as much as it could help a recruiter. I mean, just my 2 cents. I think the veteran field should be plenty.
Well, now this is employer contact, not the veteran. Well, okay, but it's the employer contact saying I was in the Marines, and if he, by definition, as a recruiter, if he's looking for any veteran, maybe he wants Marines. Maybe because of that he wants Marines, so that you can use that information to funnel Marines to it. But it's valuable information. I mean, what's the downside of having that information?
I mean, I asked what's the downside of having a multi-select then?
Well, because it's just like it's just the cost of collecting that information is not worth it.
Let me ask a question. How often is it going to happen? And I understand everyone's points. I've been sitting here listening. This is all good conversation. That's why I've been listening here, getting you guys to think. Is how often is it going to be that someone's gone to multiple branches of the military?
2%.
More often than you
I'm going to
think.
guess 2%, but it's not going to matter. I can promise you that based on 10, 12 years of experience. Guys might mention it, but I promise you it's very minor. It comes up and it's kind of unusual. It's a point of conversation, but it's whatever last branch of service they were in that is what matters in this relationship as far as I'm concerned. And I've got some authority with this because I've been working with this stuff for a long time. It simply doesn't matter in this particular context. To me, it's important to know if I know a guy is a Marine, and then I can engage with him. I can give him a lot of guff, you know, because I was Army and we used to rag on the Marines in Vietnam all the time. We worked alongside them, you know, in Northern I Corps. And so I kind of have some good ammunition for like ragging on them, and they can rag back, and you know it's just conversation. It doesn't have to. There's no data integrity here. It's just really how much do I know about you personally that I can use in advancing this relationship. Period. That's all.
Please don't data integrity. Well. Okay, I want to hear where John Cassar falls out. I want to hear what JK has to say.
I think veterans more than enough to start a conversation, but I mean, John Reynolds, you have more experience, so I'll defer.
I have found that if when I find a fellow Army veteran, especially, and I say, "Oh, what was your MOS?" 11 Bravo. That was my MOS in Vietnam. 11 Bravo. We can like, okay, instantly, our relationship has gone from who the hell are you to like, I know you, and you'll take my calls, and you will, you know, that kind of thing. look, it's not.
Sorry, I don't mean to make light of it, but I mean, like I got out 2015, and most of the guys who've been in a while are like, these guys are different. They're the same guys I knew when I first joined. So I don't
Yeah, I know, I
like.
know. But we're talking, if you're a recruiter, if you're a senior recruiter in a Adobe, you're not going to have gotten out in 2016. Your service was long before, and you're going to welcome some kind of conversation around your common experience. That's all I'm saying.
Well, if they were a reservist, though, it could happen if they were a reservist, John. You're throwing out a lot of things that analysts fight against every day. You're the exact same. These are discussions that are held every day between IT specifists and general.
Okay, so
the conversations are had all the time. What I don't understand is, because we could easily solve it with a multi-select, I don't understand why you don't want a multi-select. It's just blowing me away that the solution is already there and it exists.
No,
and why
yeah, just trust me on this. Single select. Think about it from the user perspective. Do they really want to be looking at different boxes to check when really the marginal value of this information is just not that high? Okay, you're not going to use it for anything other than the relationship. Now, where is, for example, so one thing that's missing from this contact is the notes, right? The description, free form text that tells you some context. Maybe that's where you want to put it. Okay. Then what do you do with data integrity? When you've got free form notes, how do you deal with data integrity there? I mean, why does it matter in one and it doesn't matter in the other?
I know that's rhetorical, but I could give you the answer. I mean, but it sounds like that's rhetorical. The answer is, in free form notes, it's used. If a free form note can never bounce up against something else that might make it right or wrong, then to me it's fair game. But if somebody in a free form text were to say that the guy was in the Navy and the Army, and then you had a branch of service where it only indicated one or the other, I would say now you've got a problem.
Potential lost opportunity.
Look, all right, yeah. Victor, I'm going to ask you something. So you had, let's say you went to a junior college at some point, and then you went on to get your degree at a university. Would I necessarily be required to, if I had a record of your education, would I be required for some reason to include you went to two junior colleges? Why would it matter if you got your degree from that university? I'm just saying, how much overhead do you want to put on the user if their only purpose is simply to create a common point of contact? That's all. Look, take it out of here.
So to answer that question, because the Navy is currently in the process of buying Salesforce for their recruiting, for their 4,000 recruiters, and because the Navy has enforced that if any potential sailor has taken even a tennis class or basket weaving at any junior college anywhere in the world, that they have to have a transcript from each and every place that they ever earned even one credit, then in that particular case, I would say you need to list all 32 of the places that guy went, so that when you submit his paperwork, you have 32 transcripts. Now,
we're not. Okay, look. So let's get rid of it.
Salesforce, the answer for the Navy, the answer would be imperative.
Okay, I'd rather not have
that field. For your use as a general salesperson to be able to have a discussion, I would say hardly important at all. So it depends on the usage, and it depends on the future usage. But I'm a stickler on, if it can't, you try to make it as 100% right, as painlessly as possible for growth, for additional reporting, to make sure your charts and graphs are right. and because as soon as you introduce the slightest bit of wrongness, it amplifies itself later. It's geometric progression, not algebraic.
And how is that?
So again,
how is that going to hurt you?
That's my.
Let's say some guy. Let me just make one point.
Been the way I've rolled. We could agree to disagree, John, but you can't make me change my mind on what I've done for 25 years.
All right, let me ask you something. Let's say you served with a Coast Guard, and you know, obviously I don't know about it because you haven't said you did. But let's say you did serve with a Coast Guard, and just to keep things short, you know, because you're with the Navy now and that's what you identify with, you tell me, yeah, Navy is my branch of service. Now, if I failed to record the fact that you were with a Coast Guard, have I somehow violated the data integrity?
So now you're asking if something is not, right, so now you're asking if something is not in there, does it violate integrity? And that's like a null
okay,
answer. So
Victor,
if it's,
the solution from your standpoint, if I were a user, I would say just get rid of the field. Don't even have it there, because now you need to put that information, if you want to include it, you need to put that information into the free-form notes. Otherwise, it violates something if it's not completely reflective of the actual record of this person. And why that matters, I don't really honestly know. And maybe this will, you know, and again, I think it's worth having this conversation because everything boils down to what is going to serve the user. If, in fact, you serve with a Coast Guard and I've got you listed as being with the Navy, just for convenience, right? Pick one. Just pick one. You know, you're maybe let's say with the last name of Roselli, I'm guessing you have Italian heritage. I can probably infer that. I can probably infer that, but you're an American. You're an American, and that helps me, right? I mean, you're an American citizen. I'm an American citizen. That's good to know because it allows me to enter into a relationship with you, at least the beginnings of a relationship. You know, you're a you know, personable guy. I know that. You know, I can note that and say, well, I wouldn't mind having a beer with this guy, Victor. There's some other facts about you that are relevant to the creation and the building of a relationship in this context, right? So I'm going to want to know some. I think it would be really nice just to have a checkbox, right, that says if you're a veteran. Do you think that would really be helpful to know? If you're a Dan, I mean, and if he's a veteran, would it be helpful to know which, let's say, which branch of service they identify with? Which of the 5 do they identify with? It doesn't matter if they have, maybe they got a father was Air Force and maybe they got, you know, whatever, but it would be really good to know if they're a veteran, which of the services they got their, you know, they identify with, right? And if you're required to put one or more, right, with all those checkbox, it just becomes more work. It's just intended to be just another point of contact. That's all. And I don't want to kind of get into this a whole lot,
I think there should be at least an option to not say like yes, no, refuse to answer for the veteran question. But I have a question about notes.
But it comes up, Robert, let me just say, this comes up in conversation only, right? If I'm, and I've worked, we got 8,000 veterans in our database, 9,000, and we have 5,000 employers. I've talked to hundreds of them. And I almost always ask when I'm talking to an employer, I say, by the way, you know, did you serve? And if they didn't, that's fine. But if they did, I'll ask them the branch of service, and then we have a little conversation about that. And then next time we talk, the conversation becomes, it's just a lot easier.
It's camaraderie. Yeah, well, it's establishing rapport, camaraderie. I think I understand. And like I said, I'll defer to your experience.
Point of commonality. It's not camaraderie so much. It's really about building trust. And when you have common experience, that goes a long way to building trust. So if you can refer to that, then things go a lot easier. I've been in sales all my life, and I promise you, these are things that you want to be able to instantly refer to when you and build on.
Your experience is certainly valuable here. I think my personal take, like I said, and it doesn't have to be implemented, is veterans enough, and then you can just say, oh, you're a veteran. Obviously, you were in some kind of service, and then you can open a conversation with which branch. Knowing which branch beforehand, I don't see what kind of advantage that would give, but I don't have the experience you do.
No, but
I have a question about notes.
you would never know it beforehand. You can only know it by talking to the guy. And wouldn't you want to just simply note it so that you can refer to it in your next conversation?
Well, I don't know. Like, I've left off my military service on a few applications I've submitted to certain places. Sometimes people just don't want to offer that information. It's usually there has to be some kind of consent from the veteran's standpoint.
Robert, not if you are the military recruitment person for that company.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, if it was already given, for sure.
No, it isn't already given. But if you're talking to that person, and you can say it, well, how did you become? How did you get into this? And you can ask an open-ended question. It'll come out. You say, well, look, I was in the Army for 20 years, and I was a recruiting guy, and I really, really like working with veterans. Boom, you can just check that box, so that next time you talk to them, you can refer back to that. It's that simple. It's really not. It's like if the guy tells
John,
you.
you already won me on this point. Like I said, I'll defer to your experience. I have a question about like the note section because it seems like there's two note fields, right? Like in the timeline where it says enter a note. So you can write a note there, but then we also have like a separate note field. So are they interconnected? Is it kind of like a scratch pad versus like documented progressive? Like, how are they interacted, or are they interconnected in any way?
Well, I'm going to add a note. All right. So the note gets added to the timeline. There's certain, like a description here that I like to have, which is static information, right? So let's say I'm talking to Victor and, it could be like, oh, lives in Hawaii, right? Now, well, it's going to be on here somewhere. It's going to be like his address, or maybe the zip on here, and you can say, oh, okay, he lives in Hawaii, but just interesting things about him. He's got 2 kids. Maybe he offered this information, right? He's got, a kid in college. He likes to water ski or surf or whatever. That's where you put this stuff because it's front and center. And when you connect with them, you can say stuff like, hey, Victor, how's the surfing going? Or, how's your daughter doing? Or, whatever. But this is stuff that stays here rather than getting, buried down the chain, because this is date driven. And if you add like, okay, some fact, you can edit the note here. But by the time, after a few transactions, emails and phone calls and whatnot, this information is going to be way, way down at the bottom. So what I like is just some ready reference, and really think of this, guys, the branch of service stuff as just a fact of this, but it is an indexable and searchable and, just handy reference. Since you're dealing with placing veterans, it seems to me that this in particular, that he's a veteran and maybe the branch of service is going to be, really contributing to that whole purpose, right? Because you're trying to get veterans placed. If they're a veteran, then they're going to really understand what it takes, what's involved in transitioning, and they're going to have a lot more empathy for this veteran. And so that is really important business information to have, in my view.
Yeah, no, I've worked at the veteran outreach offices at like both the VA and college campuses, but we never, I don't know, branch of service, I guess it'd be interesting to see, but I don't,
Okay.
it is what it is. To me, it could go either way. During a conversation, if someone served in multiple branches, they could say it. I don't see the
Okay,
value
so
of having it, not having it, either way. I don't know. But the notes,
John,
so it's separate. Yeah, on the
this is,
like
look,
on the candidate form, we'll see the note field. So essentially, that's not tied into the timeline at all, or like from a
I
usability perspective.
mhm.
I agree with John as far as having those like readily available, just a small little paragraph of notes that are always available without scrolling is very valuable. I see the usage of the two separate kind of notes. One is more like transactional in case you ever needed to scroll down and look and see what you did with, at the at a meeting, at maybe your first meeting 3 months ago, how that went. But then having those a little comment box where you type in just things that you want. They're like standing notes that are always easy to see is valuable rather than having to scroll through dozens of those timeline notes. I like that.
Yeah. So look, guys, let's. I hope this conversation. I get a little, I guess, worked up about this stuff. That's just more style. So please dismiss any thought that I'm, getting a little exercised about this. That's just kind of how I roll. But I hope that you've taken in why I have included this information here. And it's based on my many years of experience in dealing with and really trying to kind of understand what might serve Dan's purpose in this environment. That, in other words, we've talked to Victor Roselli. Okay, look, Victor we know he's just, okay, we've got him as three guys, so we're going to get rid of Air Force and we're going to get rid of Army. When I talked to Victor about hiring somebody, he's a recruiter, and next time I talk to him, I'm gonna give him a call at his number. And I know it's not 808, but it's let's just put something in here, right? And then I can actually use this, by the way, to call. I'm opening Skype. You can just click on it and just call on Skype. That's kind of a cool thing. And then right, so I open Skype, but look what it does. Also, it creates like a phone call, right? And then well, here, I'll open Skype just for fun. And then I'm going to put in here, I'm going to say new job or something, right? Call from me to Victor. And it was outgoing, and then I can put, description here, and then I can save it. And now, where are we? Oh, yeah. So I go back to Victor, and now it's going to be like, see, it includes this phone call now here that I just made. Now, of course, it like Robert and Victor said, it just sort of like adds it, and everything else, just kind of goes back to the bottom there. Okay. Anyhow, look, let's call that a day. I know this has been kind of we've had a very intensive discussion around ultimately what I think is a really key issue, and that is really understanding it's not what you think should be the case. If there's a technical reason to do something, or if there's a one reason to do something, great. But again, I think this has been a good exercise in terms of really understanding the user, that it's the users, get inside the user's mind. How are they going to use this, right? And in my experience doing very similar things over the past 11, 12 years, My guess is that Dan is also going to find very useful this information. Okay. Now, if he doesn't, that's fine. We can just get rid of it. But I'm really coming from the user's standpoint, not what we might presume is really important to do. Data integrity in this particular case, it doesn't matter because we're not going to be held to any standard for this. This is just informative information. Information allows us to develop a relationship with this person. That's it. It's like knowing if you've got blue eyes or green eyes. I mean, the only way that matters is in your relationship with that person. Not, you're not going to be put in jail if you don't get it right.
Hey, John, if you scroll down, do you not see the notes field on? I don't see it there on yours. On my testing, I do see a notes. Well,
I'm refreshing. Yeah, I don't see it. There should it would be good to have.
It's actually below that. It's below the summary section, which on mine I see it down. I see it down there, and I could start typing notes in. I don't know why there's a difference. Robert, do you or Sarita, do you see the notes field from the contact record from a contact like I do?
You looking at a candidate contact or a dual form contact? Because I believe the employer contact may not have it, whereas the other two contact forms will.
Yeah,
so, maybe I'm looking at a candidate. Okay,
yeah, it's definitely the employer contact does not have it, but the contact, the candidate does.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anyhow, yeah. So I think overall we're doing pretty well. I think one thing, Victor, I don't know, did you pick up okay, we got the job detail, right? So applications, oh yeah.
Yeah, employers on there now. I think the two things that you asked for were done. I think either Sarita or Robert, either one might have pitched in on some of those. Thanks a lot, guys. If there's anything else, certainly I'll write it down.
It's no problem, Vic. I added the job title to the job postings that we're looking at right now, and I think I added the employer, or the employer may have already been there, but I made sure to have those two columns next to each other, so that'll be like one of the first things they can see when they're looking at the candidate.
Good idea.
Yeah, change veterans to candidate.
So I'm wondering here if we have job. This is the job posting is consultant here, right? And so by definition, that is going to be associated with a particular employer, right? Sample Co. But we've got. I don't quite get why these would not equal consultant, right? Because this is the job posting is the job title. So I'm
is that the job? I wonder if it's a different field for the title of the. In other words, the person's title, not necessarily the job's title. That's a confusing thing. There's a job title for jobs we apply for, but then there's also, like, when we add a contact, we capture the title that contact is within their firm. I wonder if we got if you go back there, John, I wonder if we got them mixed up.
You mean, okay. Yeah, so this is a supposed to be consultant with Sample Co. right? So sample code is only going to have one consultant type. So remember that it's the employer and the job title or job posting that make it unique. So this, if it's job posting with sample code, right? Because this is a job posting, it's consultant, but it's obviously already with sample code. But how come the job title does not? It should say consultant.
Yeah, that's actually the job title of Genghis Khan as a contact, and that's the job title of Jim Johnson as a contact. There's another. Sarita, do you want to look and grab the other field so you can see the difference, or do you want? Can you take a look at that?
Yeah, I can take a look at it. Sure.
It's just tricky because unfortunately the way it's built, there are two job titles. Like when you create a contact, like when you created Genghis Khan, and he belonged to Tampico.
Right. Yeah.
That's his job title with Tampico. That's not the job title of the job posting. So there's two of them, and bottom line is, what Sarita, just pick the other one and then drop this one, and you'll be good.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So really what it is this column should not be here, right? Because obviously it applies to the consultant. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's not use job title.
But the same default view might exist somewhere else, so I don't mind. If it's needed, I don't mind having it, because sometimes a default view somewhere else will need it. But nonetheless, it's the wrong one here. Nonetheless.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, these are pretty minor things, but hopefully, to me, what I've learned in 30 years plus of consulting is that the most important thing is really to bring all of your expertise, which, I'm really impressed and I'm really proud of what you guys have done and learned. It's really, really gratifying to me. And you want to bring that plus a sensibility for what the client really, how they're going to use it, get inside their heads. Just empathy is underrated, and you just want to get inside there and say, look, how are you going to use this? And what kind of field, maybe you think that because it's a, some sort of like a hard-coded, drop-down field that it needs to have data integrity. Okay, that's fine. But ask yourself, how is this person really going to be using this data? It might, and might there be some value in effect, creating a record, I guess, that you can search on and say, look, how many, I want to do a lookup of employer contacts that happen to have served in the Marines. I've got some reason for that, right? And then boom, 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 you just you can do that. Now, I don't know if that's going to have value or not, but I found it to be very valuable, right? I've got a Marine who's looking for a job. I know Marines take care of each other. And I can do a real quick filter. I can say, okay, I got these recruiters who are in these companies, they're Marines, and they're going to go the extra mile for this Marine. For me, that's how I use it, okay? Now, if they happen also to have served in the Coast Guard, okay, fine, but that's, I missed that information, but that's really not all that important to try to track. So put yourself in the shoes of the client. Is ultimately, because what they're looking to you for is really to use technology to help them solve their problems. So I would just encourage you to do what you can to put yourself in their shoes.
Makes sense to me.
All right, good. Well, listen,
Thanks
guys.
for the advice, John.
Pardon me?
I said thank you for the advice.
Well, I hope it is. I hope it serves you. It wasn't obvious to me when I first started out in this whole business. a long, long time ago. It's just kind of what I picked up from experience, and I just hope that it has some value. But thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm really, like I say, just really proud of what you've done. And we're going to, Dan and I have talked about how to, get you in front of some employers. I will have talked to you individually. Sarita and I had a good conversation, but, about not only where you want to work, but how you want to work, what kind of job you want to get into, what might be appropriate. So I'll look forward to having, it's an ongoing conversation, but certainly I think that's the next step. We're just about ready to launch this, and I want to get you, essentially get you in front of some employers who really value what you've accomplished. All right,
John,
I'm gonna sign off.
actually, I have one kind of quick question, and it could be something that we save for Friday. But so, as far as
Well,
it comes to
Friday there is no meeting. It's kind of a
fourth,
long weekend starting tomorrow.
nice. So, but as far as like the employer contacts, just all of them go. For each individual company, is there only, because we have a primary contact field, so is it going to be a primary contact by the team of other recruiters, or is it going to be we can directly contact different kind of recruiters or employer contacts at these companies?
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
Yeah, so from a user perspective, I'm looking at this. I have an applicant. I want to link them up with an employer contact. So I'm going through the employer contacts. I see Adobe. I see there's 5 different employers or contacts there. There's one primary contact. So using kind of what we just learned, I could say, well, okay, the applicant I have is a Navy veteran. Which of these employer contacts are also Navy veterans? I can kind of link them up. But then you also have a primary contact. So
Right.
how does my main concern would be if the primary contact is, let's say, the head of a recruiting team, like how the information filters in or applicants filter to him on that end? Like, would it be up to him to kind of say, oh, I know which recruiter you can work at and so on? It could be like a question without an answer. And it may be something that once it's in practice, then it will figure it out. But I don't know. It just seems like you would refer them to the primary contact for that organization regardless.
Well, look, I mean, maybe not. Right. So what you'd want to go to is, for example, okay, so you go to contacts, and again, if there maybe you can look to see if if they're a veteran, right? Here's a Navy veteran. Here's where maybe knowing a Victor Roselli within this contact who is a Navy veteran, and Victor, I'll just ask a rhetorical question and say, well, if you were the recruiter in this company and, with your stuff in the Navy, and you knew that this guy was a Navy veteran, would that make a difference? And maybe not. But I might look to here, and maybe if there's another column that says branch of service, veteran is assumed, maybe get rid of this and replace it. Say, okay, here's a Navy veteran within this company. This guy might be more inclined to promote or to sponsor or to support or champion this veteran. So I'm going to reach out to this guy because of their common experience in the Navy, right? And he may not be the primary one. Maybe I'll reach both of them. I'll say, well, sure, I'm going to reach the primary one, but I'm going to copy John Smith because he is a Navy guy also, and I'm going to send my candidate to both of them.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's like, if the position matches the applicant. Yeah, Yeah, I don't know.
You don't want to track all the information. You just want to track the course information that would allow you to know at least where to direct an applicant to.
Yeah,
if
okay.
that's the case. That's one scenario of many.
Yeah,
But
and it
what I'm
could be an
saying,
optional field, right? So if
yeah.
someone an end user is comfortable using it that way, they can do it that way. Someone else that uses it a different way. The actual application's adaptable. But you had mentioned something earlier about kind of having that field, the branch of service field, appear or not appear based on yes or no for the veteran, or checkbox, however you want it. Did you want me to do that? I had it implemented, but I guess like presenting it to Dan, you don't want it doing too much at once, I guess. But if that's something that you want back in, I can put it back in, no problem.
I think it would be really cool if you could do that. I mean, if you want to play with it, you were able to do that in another context. I thought that was really slick. Yeah, just look, if you click, and have it be a checkbox, right? So if he's a veteran, yes, and then you just say branch of service, which is optional. You don't know if necessarily, but usually and again, the way you're going to gather the information, you might get it from LinkedIn. If you do, then you're going to know the branch of service. You can implement it. But if you're talking to the guy, just say, hey, look, how did you get to be the director of military recruiting for Amazon? A person I know very well. And he'll tell you, hey, look, I was a Navy guy. I was a Mustang. I basically, was enlisted, and then I went to Naval Academy, and I came out, and I just had a knack for HR, and I really had not just a knack, but a passion, and and all of this stuff I'm putting in the notes, but I'm also just saying, okay, this guy is a Navy veteran, boom, and it just comes out, and you just put it there. Okay, that's good to know. Because then I get a Navy guy who's coming out and, oh, okay, they've got some affinity, right? Based on their common experience in the Navy. That's just more information, but it's pretty important information in this context.
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess it's some like non-veteran users, if there are any of this application at some point. I'm sure on the employer side, that'll probably happen. If they aren't kind of familiar with those experiences that people in different branches may have had, still be able to use the application
Of
effectively.
Course.
Yeah.
Totally. But, think about that. Dan is talking to these people or communicating with them pretty regularly. And in fact, he may be persuaded of the value of including this information in the questionnaire, right? When employer contacts sign up, oh, by the way, are you a veteran and what branch? Just asking because that'll help us help you in some ways. I don't know, but however it comes to them, or however it gets into the database, it's in this context, it is important information, and that I can assert with great confidence based on my own experience.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's no issue putting it in, leaving it out. I looked at Victor's still here. I looked at your app, and it kind of the separate employer and candidate. It's two separate entities, which because of the out of the box capabilities of the contact entity in Dynamics, like when John clicked phone and it opened Skype and stuff like that, we're doing the one out of the box entity contacts and then limiting access to the records that are contact. So, and then that's going to be done pretty much through forms, security roles and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's what I think. Scripting, I think, is like, because it creates a bunch of headaches just because if there's some weird security patch that Microsoft rolls out, it's going to affect everything with security roles and forms, but it may not cover whatever custom script someone put in. So,
Are you saying, but does the entity relate? I'll have to take a look. So you're thinking that I created a separate contacts table?
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. Like how you created job applications and job postings in this app, kind of like from scratch, essentially. It looked like the same was done for the contact types. And I mean, that was the first solution I tried, but the actual entities that Dynamics comes with, they have a whole lot of stuff going on, like behind the scenes. And we can edit them and change them and stuff, but like all those relationships, like when you were selecting custom relationships or custom whatever, the non-custom stuff, that is something that we should keep in. As it was explained to me, it's just like the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for example, that can be plugged right into a contact, whereas for a custom entity, maybe not. So there's like a whole bunch of like apps, like plugins and stuff.
Default solution.
Yeah, so I think the unfortunate thing is the security kind of schema that's going to be applied to this is going to take a lot of time, unfortunately. But it would have to be done.
You guys want to continue? I've got to run, but you guys want to continue talking? I can give you the control if you like, but I have to run.
I'm good, John. Thanks. Good session today. Got us brainstorming. No, I'm good. Robert, John, Robert, unless you need to talk about anything, I don't need to.
No, I don't know. Mostly just spending my time looking for work. But I feel comfortable with Dynamics for sure.
Robert, I'm sorry, you said you were sold on the Dynamics?
Well, I mean, so if I was running my own company, I wouldn't buy it. It's exceptionally expensive, and there are a lot of open source solutions that do the same thing. But I mean, the companies that do incorporate Dynamics that actually have the capital to use this, right? Some people drive Cadillacs. I ride a bicycle, right? I'd be happy to be the mechanic who works on their Cadillac, right? I feel very comfortable with it. There's a few shortcomings, but it can certainly be. There's certainly enough workarounds, but it's like I think John Cassara said his biggest kind of selling point is you have an Azure database. It's supported by Microsoft. You have Dynamics and all the different kind of plugins or apps for that, all supported by Microsoft. So, you don't have to worry about one part of your overall CRM having some kind of massive security flaw or anything like that. Generally, it's all handled by the provider. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the actual Dynamics kind of suite, I guess you can call it. It's cool. I like working in it.
Okay.
John, give us the control. Robert, I want to spend 5 minutes with you. I want to show you a couple things that'll help you with what you're talking about right there.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk more with each of you, around your parameters and how I can best help you guys. I think for sure you're employable somewhere, and I just want to kind of better understand what the how to grease the skids for each of you. So we'll talk individually, but I got to run. I'm going to give I'm going to give Victor, I'm going to make you the organizer. All right. And you're the organizer. I'm going to jump off, but great discussion, guys. I hope it had some value for you.
Yeah, have a happy 4th of July.
All right. Happy 4th. All right, guys. Happy 4th. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, Robert, you got my screen?
Yeah, I'm tracking. Yeah, so See the
So
yeah
so look at
contact there.
so here's the so I went to dice.com. See up here,
Yeah, yep.
and then I typed in junior dynamics analyst, and this one right here. I didn't look it over, but it says Dynamics 365 CRM admin / junior developer. It's in Alpharetta, Georgia, I guess. I would venture to guess that anything where you see Dynamics 365 or CRM or Dynamics CRM and you see JR or junior, I would venture to guess you could talk your way into a position like that. And here's why. Again, I didn't read this, but I'm not too concerned about what it says, because when you reach out, usually these postings on Dice are posted by headhunting firms. You're familiar with them, right?
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience with them. I don't know. These days, a lot of them you have to be very kind of vigilant as to who you submit your information to. I had an interview and they sent me some paperwork, and it turned out it was a huge scam, and the paperwork looked exceptionally official. I didn't get taken by it. I got to a point where I was like, let me dig a little deeper, but I try to go right to the source these days.
Well, but your chances at our skill level, for anybody that wants a technical analyst, it's going to be difficult to get in,
Oh yeah,
because there'll be, let's put it this way. Well, again, with Dice, I've never been fooled or duped, but I haven't used it in a few years. But it should be pretty good. But anyway, I hear exactly where you're coming from. All I'm getting at here is that when you're dealing with a headhunter, chances are they want you in the position as bad as you want to be in the position. So they will do their best to leverage your skills and sell you to the employer. And as when you're hired as an analyst, if you're not working out after 2 weeks, they just easily tell the headhunter, get rid of them, and they do. So I would say my advice, if you're looking for work, is to talk with some of these headhunters and tell them that you know enough about 365 CRM, to build a solution, that you haven't actually ported it into a live environment yet in Azure, but that you can build stuff, and they want to skim off of your hourly rate, and they will help you get in. When you're dealing directly with the employer, they could give a shit whether you get in. They probably have 30 people. Well, that's another thing. And with Dynamics, I think the playing field now is kind of tight. I think that the supply of jobs, or the demand for jobs, I think, is greater than the amount of people who could fill them, which I think, again, is in your favor.
yeah, I've noticed that too, which is certainly promising. That's why I'm trying to kind of learn as much as I can, so that an actual expert will be like, okay, he can at least learn what he doesn't know. And yeah, I feel like I'd fit the role. Unfortunately, my resume doesn't match a lot of this stuff. So, and working with headhunters, certainly a good idea. I'm going to do it. It's just a lot of work that needs to be done for like framing my ability, I guess you could say. Whereas creating these apps and stuff to demonstrate it, I find is a lot better than trying to like pitch someone on my my ability. I'm generally pretty cautious. I'm not going to be like, yeah, I could create a brand new app, install a new database for your Fortune 10 company. Like it's like, yeah, I mean, I could be on the team that does that and kind of do what's asked of me, and that's kind of the role I'm looking for. So yeah, that's the main goal. That's kind of the primary motivator at this point. So I'll check it out. I've been looking for government positions too. Feel
That's
like
something. Yeah, that could take a year or two. Those are a pain in the ass if you've. But yeah, I mean, if you needed, that would be a good. Yeah, I like that route as well. Right, you get the pension, you get the security. You're not working your hump off, probably as much as you would with endless 365 jobs waiting for you to do after you finish the one you're working on.
yeah, who knows? I don't know. It's depends on kind of what organization. But I mean, I took out student loans, so it'd be nice to have those forgiven through service. That's the primary reason. But yeah, the pension's nice, all the benefits and stuff like that. It just does seem like a pretty solid setup. I've had more success with getting interviews for state level positions, but the pay is usually really dicey, to say the least.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, like 15 bucks an hour for positions that private companies are paying 50, 60 grand a year for. So, um, yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I'll definitely check this out. There's a lot of hurdles that I'd have to overcome from a resume standpoint. It just wouldn't make it past the filter. Like my undergrad isn't related to a lot of the positions and so on. I have advanced degrees, but the demand for those is almost non-existent. So
What do you got? Philosophy? What
yeah,
is it?
close to it. No, it's my undergrad was communications, basically like policy. So it's like FCC type stuff. Like the rules surrounding what frequencies can be
No, no,
used, like
that's
that.
my degree. I know. I got a comms degree. My
Yeah,
master's my master's is in education, school guidance
yeah,
counseling. But so yeah, but don't sell yourself short. I mean, just tailor your resume maybe to go towards skill instead of employer. You got analyst, you've got accounting. That reeks of number crunching. So I would highlight that. Uh,
yeah.
but
That's where most of my experience has been in the tax realm, which is nice. And most companies that do some kind of accounting, finance, they all work on some kind of platform. And 365 actually has like a finance. I don't even know what to call them. Like the one we've been working on is for like customer engagement or sales, right? Like they have all these different like modules that companies can buy, and I guess most of them, from John Cassar's standpoint, for the most part, it seems to be he just sells them it out of the box, and then someone like JUL will customize it how they want to use it, which seems like it'd be a pretty sweet gig. But yeah, the finance and like for operations, like those seem exceptionally complex. Like all the out of the box entities that we see, a little complex, but the out of the box entities for those, I think, are just like it would take more than a summer of learning to really nail down. But yeah,
yeah,
we'll see.
good
Hopefully,
luck. Yeah.
yeah, my hope is because I have the knowledge of what the software is going to be used for, it'll be helpful in customizing it. You know, like so, but we'll see. I don't know.
For $6 a month, I mean, I know what it's like when you're looking for work. Money every $5 is a lot of money. But for $6 a month, you could get a month-to-month business SharePoint solution for yourself. So I've done it, and it's powerful. So if you wanted to learn SharePoint, like from a standpoint of setting up your own sites and creating solutions like my SharePoint site for $6 a month gives me Power Apps, and then I created lists in SharePoint that I use for the data for my Power Apps. So it's like having this Dynamics environment to us, which is one thing, but then you could have your own thing that you could use as a demonstration, or you could show it to a potential client, or
portfolio.
You're going to get $1,000 a month worth of experience playing with your $6 a month SharePoint website. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I hear you. I did that. I created I have a website that I created, and it's using all open source stuff, right? Because it's in the budget. So it's like it's like
What is
Angular.
it? What is it? What's the web address?
www. Yeah, go for it. www.robertcfarrell. So CFARRELL.com. So this is the static site, right? And if you click on enter, it brings you to the hosting site for the server, which
you actually got you actually have a JD?
Oh yeah. I wanted to go JAG, but that's almost like trying to make special forces. To be honest with you, they make the cut. So let's just say it's.
No, let's talk about that for a second. Are you within height weight standards for the Navy?
Likely. I was going for JAG for the Marine Corps, and I was like doing really well, but it felt like they were trying to push me towards other roles that the recruiters needed because there's only so many slots.
No. There's an opportunity that nobody probably knows about except me, unless you talk to the Navy within the last year. They have a reserve. They have a reserve position for JAG now, which they never had. They just opened it up about a year and a half ago. As long as you pass the bar, and you have a JD degree, and you have prior military service, you could potentially be a reserve officer in the Navy coming in as a Lieutenant JG, as a JAG reserve officer. Before the last 18 months, before the last year or two, that there was never an option to become a reserve officer as a JAG. You always had to have been active duty JAG and then drop into the reserve. It's a brand new, as far as Navy history goes, it's a brand new program, a brand new opportunity. And if you're not getting more than 10% of veterans disability, and you pass height and weight standards, and you pass the bar, and you've got a JD, then you could apply for Navy Reserve JAG officer.
Yeah. I mean, I think I meet height and weight standards. I'm tall as get out, so. But I probably have to work on passing the PFT. Like I said, when I was trying out for the Marine Corps, I was fit as a fiddle and ready to go. But yeah, I don't know. It sounds like I'd be qualified, or at least can get to qualified. So one of the big issues with reserve service, though, and I was in the reserve for a while, is like it's really difficult to meet your obligations if you don't have steady full-time civilian employment.
Don't worry about that. Get in the reserves, and then what you could do is you could look for active duty for special work. You could which is ADSW. You could look for active duty for training, which is ADT. I'm in the reserves. I've been on active duty since 2012. It's rare, but with your skills, especially as an analyst, maybe a human resource analyst, maybe a number cruncher, once you're in and you meet the obligations of JAG, because they're going to want you to train, and they'll give you plenty of time to train and become a fully qualified Navy JAG. Once you're done with that, then you could work outside of your specialty. So if you wanted to come on orders as a recruiter, they would love to have you. You could get 5 years active duty right there without blinking an eye. You could have a job as a Lieutenant JG making $100,000 a year as a recruiter, or you could work as an analyst in Millington, Tennessee, I would say, even if it's not as a JAG, if you get in the reserve, you could easily go to an active duty job, at least as a recruiter. So don't, I mean, then you're getting, you're getting more time toward retirement. You're doing more active duties, which gives you more points toward retirement. If you could get back in, I would say try it. Even if it's as an enlisted guy, you could easily come on recruiting orders for 5 years. You won't have to worry about a job.
Like I said, I was in, and that was one of the big things trying to maintain. This was in Southern California, so like the big thing was trying to maintain work that I could not that I could also afford, like an apartment and so on. And it was a huge struggle, and meeting the obligations of service was just added stress. Like it seemed like the benefits weren't outweighing the detriments. And I mean, obviously, if you have someone who can't perform, it doesn't help anyone. So before I got to that point, I just didn't renew my contract. And it's like I said, it's certainly been something that I've wanted to keep kind of as an option. But I feel like it's more important for me to have some kind of full-time steady work before joining a reserve component for sure. Because like from the recruiter standpoint, there is all these opportunities, but once you get into a unit, right, there's those opportunities are kind of filtered based on whoever's doing the filtering, whatever criteria they have going on. And then um, it, there isn't a whole lot of leeway for, like, hey, I don't have a car. I don't have any money to get to whatever station I need to. And they're like, okay, well, you're AWOL. Like, figure out from there. And that's kind of just anticipating how to both serve and be unemployed, to say the least. It just seemed like it seemed almost like just not really in anyone's best interest, myself or the service. But it's certainly something that, like, if I get especially like a government position where I'm working 40 hours a week, right, then I'd be more than happy to serve in a reserve component. But yeah, I don't know. I think the focus on kind of supporting myself should be paramount. But yeah, this is the site I'm in. It's basically like just goofing around. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that because it's and everyone was it's a really good one, huh? Oh, I'll be darned. And then lawsuit graders, right? Yeah. So you built this all from scratch.
Yeah, it's almost a constant work in progress, but it's like I had a website, just I was posting my resume on there, right, to get myself out there a bit more. And working in tax and accounting, there's software solutions everywhere, and figuring out how to customize those solutions to let me do my job quicker, more accurately, so on. Focused on that, so that I was like, if it comes down to where I have to start my own practice, I don't have the capital to do it. I don't want to, and I don't want to take out loans to kind of fund it. Like I said, I borrowed money for school. So I was like, okay, how can I create something? I can't afford to buy the software. Maybe I can create it. And I created some like minor calculation applications, which work, and they can be built on, but that's, you run into that you run out of resources doing that. It's like, okay, this is why massive software companies have so many people working at them, because while one person can understand how the program should work, how to implement it, doing it requires teams upon teams. So
Yeah, let me tell you, this is pretty neat. And you use these.
yeah.
I like this is. I think I can tell you've got a sense of humor too.
All
Remember,
right.
the dinosaurs didn't pay taxes. Look where it got them. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it
Well,
was. I enjoyed doing all this. It's pretty cool. It's built on all open source stuff. Like if you look at the web address, Heroku lets you kind of have a free, they call it a dyno or something like that. I don't know. It's like this small section of their servers that you can host stuff on. Not for production use or anything, but yeah, and it's used Angular for the Angular framework. It's a JavaScript framework for navigation and design. Yeah, these are a lot of common accounting equations or ratios that when you're analyzing different accounts or financial statements, these are the more common analysis. You put in the information from the financial statements, then it'll give you a ratio, and you can then that ratio will then tell you something about the company, whether they're likely to meet their obligations and so on.
Yeah, and you plugged them in yourself. That's not bringing me to another website where I'm using their calculator. It's your own calculator.
Yeah, I did set up an API for currency conversion because that's dynamic. That's something that changes super often. These formulas, if you hit or if you can see the source code. Well, actually, I think Angular obscures some of it, but regardless, for stuff like this, it's just algebra, so it's not something that changes over time. For currency conversion, I did have an outside API. The only problem is it charges if you do HTTPS. So I set up the secure the HTTPS, because if you don't have that, then there could be injection stuff. Like, this isn't searchable. No one's going to find it or go to it unless I direct them to it. But yeah, see the SSL.
This is the one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
No, you definitely you definitely. This is how. Shit. This is exactly. Now I started with what they call Fox Pro, which is like Microsoft Access, but years ago I just played with with something like Microsoft Access. Then I actually met somebody because I was selling stuff, and I met another guy that worked for a company that, when I was done, kind of playing around on my own, and thought, well, I should probably get a regular job. I might, be able to, get a nice place and not have my bike anymore. I took a,
right.
I took a, I asked the guy if they would be willing to hire, like a beginner, but that has some skills, and they took a chance on me. And they fed me to the wolves, of course. It was a small development team, 2 or 3 of them. And I kept asking them, where do I go for this? Or, how did you put this in here? Or what? And their answers were exactly what they needed to be. Start here and figure it out. Start here and figure it out. Look here and figure it out. So after about, 3 months of wondering whether I wanted to quit because they weren't helping me, I realized that I was actually learning a
Yeah.
shitload.
I was gonna say that's actually good help, because yeah, like they changed like this Angular, right? They keep changing it, they keep updating it, like what it does, what it can do, and that's why it's sort of job security for a developer. They have to get back in and update a site. But yeah, I've been in similar positions, except you're lucky. Someone who says read the effing manual, right? You heard that phrase before.
Oh yeah, oh, I hate. Yeah. No,
Yeah, that's
I think they at least, you know, it wasn't just read the manual. I think they at least showed me an example of some code, or they got me started. It was more than I got years later at another company where where the where the girl was working in the next office, which was, we were only divided by drywall, right? So it was 8 inches away, and actually, like, if you drilled a hole through the wall, the girl was working there. Whenever I just peeked my head out of my door into her door and asked a question, I got like no response. Like, and
yeah.
that job was, I let's put it this way, I got out of that job and hadn't looked back. But
yeah, I hear you. I've been in that position too. It's frustrating. It's
people,
your
yeah,
peers don't want to help you succeed in some places. It's odd to me, but
you need to work with analysts though, because you dive deep, you question, and you're going to be a threat. You're always going to be a threat to people who don't think, and a lot of people don't think, and they're analysts. However, like the discussion we had with John today, that would only take place for that long at that level of detail when you're in a shop full of IT analysts who thrive on, um, you know, this, then this, then this, then this, it just goes deeper and deeper, and and they want to think and they want to find the truth. So I think if you're just I think you need to be in some kind of analyst IT position, because you get people thinking, and people don't usually have the time or the care to think, and B, they feel threatened because you go to a level of detail that they don't go to, and you might be better off where it's the role of that particular department to beat the shit out of like a single field for like 2 hours at a time. But a manager would never do it. A manager would never do it.
yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid of actually working or like spending time learning how something happens. So, but yeah, there's a database connected to this too. Like if you click on Ledger, it's linked with Mongo, the Mongo database. So if you type in kind of account names, and you could do debit or credit, right? Basic accounting stuff. Type what the entry is, like, okay, car, debit or cash, debit 100. The next one is like electric bill, debit or credit 100. Um, it'll post to an outside database. It's Mongo. Um,
Oh,
so
nice, nice.
yeah, because the way accounting works, the numbers should all match. Like the debits and credits, they should equal each other. Like if you click the debit tab beside that last one, wow, yeah. If you scroll down, and it's like I said, it's a constant work in progress. Yeah, see, it'll tell you the account, the amount, when it was posted, debits or credits. Um, and it's a constant work in progress. Like you could design this to where someone couldn't put, like the entry you just made was improper, right? And so, like from an accounting standpoint. So you could have it set up to where someone wouldn't be able to do that. It would stop them from doing that. But like I said, that's where I've reached this point where it's like, okay, there's a whole lot that can be done. I feel like I could do it or learn how to do it, but there's only so much time in the day, right?
So you've got this connected to is that like a MySQL, or that's another freebie, I think, MySQL.
This is Mongo, MLab. It's not a relational database.
It's not RDBMS.
Yeah, it's
Is it?
document something, or if the D stands for document RDMS, then it may be, but it's not tables. It's not like SQL. There's not rows and columns. It's JSON data. So like this information.
Is this a big like text file with start and end tags, so you know what you're pulling?
It's not start and end tags. It uses curly braces, but it's like they call them JSON, JSON files, and it's just how the information's organized. And it's sort of like how in SQL you have tables and rows. Here you have names and values, right? But it's like another level. You have names and values, and then an object. So you could have like multiple objects with values in that object, and it's all in this document, this JSON. So it works very similar to SQL. It's just like from what I've like, I did research before kind of jumping and picking one. It integrates a lot better with sites that are powered by like JavaScript, and that's why I used it. Plus, it's free, and a lot of the tutorials kind of recommended it. On the project list, right? I want to take down this website, put it back up using React instead of Angular, and maybe a different free service that is SQL, that isn't the Mongo document style database.
That's I've heard of databases like this. I think they're supposed to be pretty fast because they don't have to index and continually re-index and organize. They just shove stuff in. Did you ever hear?
Well, it operates. Yeah, it operates similar to how Dynamics does. Like for each item, like there's an account. It's like when you enter this at this entry, it created an account object, and within that object, there's different values, and attached to it by the database. The database does this is an ID, a unique ID. And Dynamics does this as well. It has this unique ID for each different entity or field or even attributes or security roles. So you can kind of look up a specific entry by its unique ID. But I looked into like what the difference is, and it's one of those areas where like they both will accomplish the same thing, and really like the highest level designer would be determining what to kind of pick, which one to pick. I can't really, I can't, I don't know enough about the differences to really say one is better than the other. It just seems like MongoDB just was a little less Excel like, right? Which I'm familiar with.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Excel. I'm familiar with Access. So it seemed like working in something that was not like either of those would be expanding my kind of knowledge pool.
Huh. Do you know anything about WordPress?
Yeah, right. So like everything that I did, it's like the difference between buying a cake and making it from scratch, right? Like WordPress, it's like an out of the box mix. Some people go to a bakery and just buy a cake someone else made, and then some people, buy all the ingredients and make it at home, which is kind of my approach on this. So
Yeah. And what city where are you located? What part of California?
now I'm in Nevada right now. I'm in Laughlin. It's like Laughlin. And there's like, it's a small town. There isn't a whole lot going on here. So it's been a bit of a struggle. I've been looking mostly for um, like work from home stuff or relocating. And one of the big struggles I've had so far with relocation is like I have to finance it. So trying to balance that is tricky to say the least.
Yep. So another thing is just like I typed in junior here just to see what they're looking for in Nevada anyway. Junior system analyst, junior Java, junior and then you have to poke through these, but yeah, it's an app. Those are well. I'll tell you what. Let me. I'm interested to see this because I want to learn how to plug a database into some websites that I play around with. This is cool. That's where you get your. I mean, shit. If you can't put well, some people don't need a database. It's all graphic and it's all,
Yeah, like if you go back, Yeah, if you go back to the other apps, they're like the first one, IRA contribution, or this one, either way, it's all static, right? You enter your information, it gives you a result, and it's not storing anything or pulling information from anywhere. So I just kind of wanted the full kind of how websites are designed and work and so on. And again, like I said, like knowing all of like the tax rules and stuff, that was great, but a challenge was always the software, like how to get it to do what you want. And then a lot of companies, um, they create the software to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So I thought, I'm a big fan of technology. It'd be great if I could get in one of those companies creating accounting software, creating tax software, or something like that, or any sort of business software. Really, I'm not picky for sure. But like 365, it seems like a cool opportunity to customize different parts of it, which I think is where I kind of come into play. If that's what a functional consultant is, kind of what I understand it to be. Like, right, someone just bought 365 for whatever, and they needed to do what they wanted to do, and it requires customizations. You know, they can, I'd come in and customize it, and then, if need be, you know, address any issues they have while using it. It's like
You know, that's
software as a
so.
service.
Yeah, and you can also, and I thought about doing this. So another thing you could do is, so Laughlin's small, but I'm sure there's at least 4 businesses there. Um, I would, I would, well, again, another idea is, and then you pick and choose, but another idea is to just go to some small businesses that you think might need some, uh, um, custom programming. And the two that come to mind right off the 2 or 3, yeah, maybe 3 or 4, as I'm thinking about it now. Moving companies, moving companies are always manipulating marketing data. They probably find a way through a brother's sister's cousin's aunt to get the multiple listing service data. It's illegal, but almost all moving companies get a hold of what homes are for sale on the multiple listing service. And then they should remove duplicates from week to week or from day to day, which is a little bit more tricky to remove duplicates. Then they should create phone lists and mailing lists so they can mail postcards and call those and harass those people. So moving companies manipulate marketing data. Um, Used car dealerships like your small mom and pop shops that do buy here, pay here, um, probably have databases that either they've made in house and they're cheap and maybe not so good, or they've spent like maybe $200 per salesperson per month to use somebody else's take. Um, but they always want to save money, especially buy here, pay here, or small dealerships. So you might be able to help them use and again, you wouldn't want to sell them Azure and CRM, which might cost the company, $1,000 a month just to have the Azure database, and then $200 a month for each user. So if you could learn how to do it like on your own, with your own freeware technology or with SharePoint lists, you could actually develop applications on top of SharePoint lists for $6 a month. So every employee from a car dealer, as long as they all paid $6 a month, they would be able to share the SharePoint website, which is like the news portal, and then they would be able to share lists and documents and data. So you could actually build them a little solution. In any case, what I'm getting at, and then realtors is another one. They're always managing their clients' data. What I'm getting
Yeah,
at
no, I
is
mean, I looked into it. So there's
you,
a lot
you
of
could
challenges.
you,
Yeah,
you
there's a
could just
ton of.
you could sell yourself as a consultant who's learning, and you would be glad to work with them dirt cheap while you're building them a solution that's better than what they have.
I would mind doing that for someone who already has an established consulting business, right? Because if I go and do it on my own, there's a lot of implications that come into play with running a business, right? Like you have to adhere to a bunch of different state rules. If you're working in other states, you have to deal with that. And if, the local companies are using Karen's cousin to do all this stuff already, right? And he sucks at it, and I certainly could offer him a better deal, and they go with me. Well, what's to stop Karen from calling every regulatory agency in the state and my state and the tri-state area saying, oh, so and so is operating a business, I don't think he has the proper licenses. Oh, so and so, I think he's hiding this and that. And the unfortunate reality of business in America is that is occasionally a part of it, right? So if there was someone who could handle all that nonsense, right? Most of the time it's just a phone call, like, oh, no, it's not true. Okay, thank you. But having to worry about creating all the database and deliverables for these organizations while having to worry about all of that, the compliance side of things, it's too much. It's too much for one person. That's why I said, I mean, I'd be more than happy to work for someone who already has an established business. If they just need extra hands on a project or something like that, I'd be happy to jump in and move up for sure. But doing it kind of on my own, it'd be someone will come by and throw that baby out real quick. Just from my experience, unfortunately, it's cutthroat.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got you. And then if you can't deliver, that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other thing. If you were learning and you didn't give them what they wanted and they were paying you, yeah. So then you're right back to doing it for free, but that doesn't help you out of your school loans and crap. So
Yeah, and that's those are under control. It'd be nice if I worked for the government and had them forgiven. Otherwise, it just becomes another number added to the very large one that exists out there. But in small towns like I'm in now, it's even more of an issue. Or like close knit communities, it becomes even more of an issue. So, like I think like working through a recruiter, right? Like maybe through a temp agency or something like that, especially would be great. My biggest issue right now is I'm in like a remote area, so most of the work I've been looking for trying to do is work from home. And it's nice. It's a quiet area. There's just not a whole lot of opportunities available for me. So it's kind of a challenge. And I know companies, if the demand is high enough, they'll certainly let someone or help someone move to work there. So just keep my fingers crossed and applications keep going. So
gotcha. Hey, is there a vision? Is this humorous or is this legit? Check if your vision is below 2200. Is that legitimate accounting thing?
yeah, it's a tax thing. If you're legally blind, you get an adjustment to your deduction, your standard deduction.
Get out of here. Neat.
Yeah, it's strange. It's just for vision. It's not like any other disability. There's a lot of weird stuff like that, but
All right, brother. I'll let you get going, but yeah, good luck to you. I know it's yeah.
challenge.
I know.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, but I'll keep at it. Like you said, if you meet the right person who gives you a chance and you do some work for them, hopefully it blossoms into something more. Otherwise, just keep on keeping on. But yeah, good talk. Thanks for the input for sure. Have a good 4th of July. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you on next Monday.
Sounds good, Robert. You too. Have a good 4th.
Yeah, thanks. Bye bye.